Hello and welcome to the section on expression and operators. Let's look at the section objective. After completing the section, you will be able to explain expression and operators with the standard definition. When someone asks you what is expression and operator, you should be able to explain them in your own words. Then we'll look at different types of operators like conditional, arithmetical, increment, logical, assignment, comparison, bitwise, execution, and error control operators. Well, we'll go through each of the examples with each of the operators, and after this section you should be able to do all these examples by yourself. Then after that you should understand how the operator precedence will work. Precedence is basically the sequence in which sequence the operators will execute. Then finally you will work with exercises, interview question, resources, and some of the tests using the expression and operators. Okay, so let's move on to this section. Welcome to the lecture on what is expression and operators. Let's look at the lecture objective. After completing this lecture, you should be able to explain what is expression and operators in your own definition. And you should be able to understand different type of operators we have in PHP. Okay, well that's the objective you will learn in this lecture. So let's look at what is expression and how you define an expression. Expressions are evaluated into a result value or a final value or a single value. So there is a value that has been evaluated as part of that expression. Then that is called as an expression. Let's look at some of the examples. So the example is you have $message wherein you are assigning a string. We have seen this example in the string section where we are assigning a string to a variable. This assigning of a string to a variable results into a single value, means it is nothing but an expression. The whole line is an expression. $a is equal to 10, you are assigning an integer to a variable $a. It's also an expression because it has a single value. There's a result value that's assigned to an $a. If you look at the third example, $total, you see there's a function called add, and add is accepting two values, and add will return the addition of 10 plus 20, and that value is assigned to the $total. So again there is an assignment, there's a value or a result value, assign it back to some variable, and that's basically an expression. Okay, so let's look at further and understand what are operators. So what is operators? Let's take an example. $message is equal to hello variables. So $message is a variable and hello variables is a string, and everything is called as an expression, right? And the equal to sign is called as assignment operator. It's an operator that is doing some kind of operation, and that operation is assigning that string value, the variable value, to a variable, and everything that's from $message to semicolon is called as an expression. Okay, so that's how you basically read it. So when someone tells you what is the operator in the whole expression, then operator is called as assignment operator. And what is an expression? Expression will result into some kind of a single value or a final value. That's basically the $message is a value, right? So let's move on and understand what is the definition of an operator. Operators are used to perform some operation on the variables, and they are represented with some symbols. So you will see some of the symbols when we go in arithmetic operators, conditional, logical, assignment. You will see so many symbols you will see, and each symbol actually have some kind of definition attached to it, and it does some kind of operation on the variables. Some of the examples of operators is equal to, which is nothing but an assignment operator. The plus plus is an increment operator, and the asterisk is called as multiplication operator. So these are symbols. It has special meaning in the programming world, especially in all this C, C++, Java, and PHP, Python. Most of the programming language depends on these symbols to do some kind of operations on the variables. Okay, so let's look at different types of the operators. First is the arithmetic operator. Arithmetical operator basically are mathematical operators like plus, minus, divide, and modulus. Then you have conditional operators. Conditional operator is the ternary operator. We have seen this in the variable section, where you have question mark and colon, you put a condition and then you select true or false. That's basically conditional operator. Then you have increment and decrement. This is to increase the value of a variable or decrease the value of a variable. Then you have logical operators. Logical, basically you want to decide between A or B, or A and B, something like that, which you're making a logical choice between the two given options. Then you have assignment operator. Assignment, you have seen $message is equal to hello variable. The is equal to is an assignment operator. You have different assignment operators which we are going to look through in this whole section. Then you have comparison operator. Comparison is to compare two things, right? Compare means if you have a variable A and B, you want to compare whether both the variable have same value or not. Then you're going to use comparison operator. Then you have bitwise operator. Every variable or every string or integer that has been held up in a variable can be represented into bits. That's basically zeros and ones. So if you want to do an operation on zeros and ones, you use the bitwise operators. Execution operators are denoted by backtick, which is a symbol that is beside your number 1 on the keyboard. Using this, you can execute some system commands. Then you have error control operators, using which you can suppress the errors coming up from PHP. Okay, so we're going to look into each of the operators in the next upcoming lectures. We will work through an example of each of the operator, understanding how and where it should be used. So let's do a quick summary. So after this lecture, you should be able to explain what is expression and operators. At least you have a basic understanding of what is an expression and what is an operator. If someone gives you a statement and tell you, can you identify what is an expression and what is an operator? And if someone asks you, can you define or explain what is the difference between expression and operator, you should not be confused. Expression is basically the whole line, right? Doing some kind of a result value or a final value. And operator is basically a symbols that you see in terms of doing that operation on the variable. Okay, and we have walked through the different types of operator, which we'll be going through in this section. But at a high level, you know what are the different types of operators we have. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on arithmetical operators. So let's see how to do arithmetical operators with PHP. So for this, go to example 1 and open up the two files, that is deliverable and logical flow, and let's see what examples we will work through in this lecture. So we'll create 7 files and 7 different examples we will see. And here are the 7 examples that we will see as part of this lecture. The first one, we will see how to calculate a student total marks for 3 subjects. We'll use some addition operator. Then we'll display the same total without the variable. Then we'll find the difference between marks achieved and total marks. Then we'll calculate the area using the multiplication operator. Then we'll calculate the percentage. Then we'll check if remainder is 0 or 1 using modulus operator. Then we'll try to use some multiplication operator as well. Okay, so part of this, we'll create 7 files, and then we will also create a folder for it. So let's open that folder. In the amps www, will create a folder called operators. Okay, we'll place all our files here. Okay, so let's create this file. So I'm copying this file name, Control N to create a new file, Control S, Control V, and I'm using operator folder. Okay, so let's look at the arithmetical operators. So let me type all the arithmetical operators that we have. Okay, so these are the arithmetical operators we'll see in this lecture. We'll have addition that shows as plus, subtraction with a dash, multiplication with asterisk, then a forward slash as division, percentage symbol as modulus, then exponential with 2 asterisks. Okay, so first let's look at addition operator. So this is our sample 1, and the first one is calculate the student total marks for 3 subjects. Okay, For this we will define 3 subjects. Let's call this maths, okay. So these are the 3 variables which holds the marks for 3 subjects. Then we'll calculate the total. Okay, then we'll display the total marks. So if you see, I'm using an operator called plus. What it it basically add up all the integer values. So if you echo this out, student total marks for maths plus science plus English. So instead of browser, we will print this on the console. So what I'll do, I'll use PHP end of the line to print on the new line onto the console. Okay, so let's run this and verify whether we are able to print this. And one thing that to note is, while this plus symbol is not an addition operator, it's a simple plus that has been displayed in the output. So let's run this program. So for this, I will open the command prompt. So instead of browser, we will use command prompt for this example. Okay, let's head back to operators. And we'll say PHP arithmetical add operator. So if you see, the total marks is 180. Maths, that has been replaced with marks, maths marks, and science marks, and English marks. And okay, and you see these plus symbol are just text, wherein if you use the plus symbol outside, it becomes an addition. Okay, that's why the total marks is holding up the total of each of these integers. Okay, so let's move on and doing the next exercise. So I'll say Control N, Control S, Control V. Then I'll copy this code. Then we'll start creating the sample 2. This time we'll display the total without this variable, total marks variable. Okay, so for this, we'll copy this just to make sure to see whether it's printing properly or not. And we'll convert this into same arithmetical operator without a variable. So you can try different methods. Okay, if you can replace this with this, let's verify it works or not. All right, so let's use this and see what happens. Okay, and if you see here, the variables has been replaced, but the addition doesn't work. Okay, so you have to take note of it. The addition operator will not be executed inside the double quotes. Okay, the string interpolation will not do the addition operator or any kind of operators. It has to be done outside your double quotes. Okay, however, the variable substitution has been done in the string interpolation, but not the operators. Okay, that's an interesting thing to know. So how do you handle it? So you can say like this, and then you can convert it back. You can place the variables outside the string. So you can add the parentheses just to make sure all the operation happens within the parentheses first. And if you run it, you will be able to see the total marks. Okay, so do remember how this actually works, and it's more interesting to know that additional operator will not work in the double quotes. Let's move on. Let's do the third exercise. I'll copy this. Now we are doing a subtract operator. So let's do sample 3 and find the difference between marks achieved and total marks. Okay, so I'll say total subjects. This is total subject marks, and then he has total marks. We have the total marks here, right? You need to know the difference, so we'll say total difference, which is equal to total subjects minus your total marks. Okay, and if you see, it's a dash symbol, right? It's represented as an dash symbol, which is nothing but your subtraction when you want to subtract two numbers. Okay, let's print this out. Okay, so let's print this out. Now we have to use 3. Okay, so if you see, it's 120. You can move into the new line and we will add the PHP end of the line, right? So this is the difference between total and the marks achieved is 120. That's basically a subtraction from total marks with the marks that is achieved. Okay, so let's move on. Let's do the fourth exercise. Let's use an multiply operator. I'll copy paste the whole code. Let's do sample 4. This time we will calculate the area using the length and breadth. So we'll define two variables. Length is equal to 10, breadth is equal to 20, and your area is equal to length. Now you'll use asterisk, that's basically multiplication symbol, and then we'll echo the area. Right, so let's quickly look into this. Okay, that's basically your 200 is the area, 10 into 20. Okay, so that's how you use the multiplication operator. So let's use the divide operator. Let's look at sample 5. We'll calculate the percentage of overall scored marks. So we'll calculate the percentage of overall scored marks, and we'll calculate the percentage. So we'll call the variable name as percentage. So the formula is total marks divided by total subjects and multiplied by 100. That's basically a percentage. So we'll echo and we'll put a percentage symbol just to show it's a percentage. Right, let's execute this. Okay, so the percentage scored is 60%. That's the formula. So we have total marks, total subjects multiplied by 100. Okay, so let's move on. Let's do the modulus operator. So slash forward slash is basically the divide operator. Let's look at modulus. Let's look at sample 6. Use the modulus operator. Well, modulus is basically used when you want to find the remainder of the operation. So let's say you have a variable a and you divide 100 with 5 and you want to know what is the remainder of it. Okay, so let's print that. Okay, let's quickly print this. So you see the remainder is 0. So let's do another example. This time we see 101. You should get 1. That's basically a reminder of the division operation. Well, it will find out what is the remainder of when you divide 100 by 5. Right? When you divide 100 by 101 by 5, what is the remainder of it? Similarly, we quickly do for one more thing, 105 and 106. Yeah, it's gonna show the remainder. It's always 0 or 1 or whatever is the remainder, it will show you. And let's move on and do the next operator. That's the exponential operator. So I believe the last one is the exponential operator, not multiplication. So let's do the sample 7 exponential. So check exponential. So let's say $a is equal to 10, $b is equal to 20, then $result is equal to, let's do this one first. So let's try to do the exponential of 2, right? Then we'll multiply the $b with an exponential 2. And if you remember this formula, can you guess what is this formula? Well, it's a square multiplied by b square, which is nothing but you are actually doing $a multiplied by $a, and then you are multiplying that with $b multiplied by $b. Okay, that's the formula, and you will echo the result. Okay, so let's quickly look into that. Okay, so you have that value. That's basically the exponential. This is a square and b square. So a square multiplied by b square. Okay, the two is the exponential of $a value. Okay, so that's what we have learned. We have learned exponential operator, modulus operator, and divide operator, multiplication operator. Then you have addition and subtraction operator. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on conditional operator. If you look into the material folder, you will find example 2 as conditional operators. So let's open up the deliverable file and the logical flow. So we'll do one exercise. We'll see how to use the ternary operator. So conditional operator is also called as ternary operator. This is used to check a condition, right? And this is an operator. For checking conditions, you have control structures like you have if, else, switch, and all those things, which you'll be looking in the next section. We also have an operator for checking a condition. We have used this previously in our variables. So let's try to define it and we'll try to play around with it. Okay, so let's create the file. Control N, Control S, and I'm going to save in the operators, and we'll use the console to print the values. Okay, So this is how the condition operator looks like. You have a condition, then you put a question mark, then you put some value here which is a true value, and the right hand side is basically a false value. So anything on the left hand side of the colon is true and right hand side of the colon is false. Okay, when this condition is true, this value will be executed. If the condition is false, this value will be executed. So let's look into a sample example. So let's use the ternary operator because it's called as ternary operator as well. Let's use a flag variable and we'll say if flag is true. Right, now I'm using a boolean variable here. We haven't covered data types. I know we have looked into strings and we have looked into integers. We haven't looked into boolean variables, but as of now consider true and false is basically a boolean variable, which will cover this section of data types in the next section. Okay, so I'll be using true and false as a boolean variables. True means just true, which is 1, false is 0, and we'll say if this condition is true, I want you to assign this value, which is correct or wrong. Right, then I'll say echo flag. Okay, let's execute this and you say correct. Okay, let's do the opposite. Just to understand this operator, we have used this operator previously. So it's very simple. You have a condition and then it will print whatever is a true or false value. Okay, so if you see it's the value condition is true, then it will print this value. If the value condition is false, it will print this value. Well, I hope the ternary operator is simple to use. Give a try out your examples, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Welcome to the lecture on comparison operators. So let's look at the comparison operator. So we'll do 5 examples here. The first example, we'll use equal to operator to check the PHP version. Then we'll define 2 variables and we'll see whether they are identical or not. So there is 3 equal to. Then we'll find an orange. That's a simple example to show how to find something. And using this operators, which is all this called as not operator. Find the senior citizen whose age greater than 60 using the greater than operator. And find the kids who can eat free pizza. So we'll try these examples using all the operators. I will try to understand the operators. So part of this, you'll create 5 files. So I'll use the same operator folder. I'll save this. Okay, just to save time, I will copy paste all the operators here. Okay, so this is the equal to operator. Don't confuse this with equal to. So anything apart from is equal to is basically the operator. So this is the equal to, double equal to, and this is also called as equal, but it is identical operator. Then this is not equal to. There are 3 operators here. This is 1, this is 2, and this one is 3. Then you have greater than, less than, greater than equal to, and less than equal to. So let's look into all these examples. So for this, we will create one sample and we'll see equal to operator. So we'll use we'll define a variable PHP version is equal to 7.5. And we'll say system version. So how to get a system version? So there is an PHP constant for it, PHP underscore major underscore version, and then it will give you the PHP version. That's basically 7. Then you will say PHP, again you will use the minor version. Okay, now we will compare whether our version and the system version are same or not. So we'll say echo, and we'll use the conditional operator that we have learned previously, and we will say PHP version is it equal to system version? That's what we're trying to do here. And if yes, then I want to print something, and I want to say version matched, and I'm gonna say version does not matched. Okay, so let's quickly run this. Okay, it says version doesn't match. You can see PHP-v. So the PHP version is 7.1.8, so we'll say 7.1, and we'll try to run this again. So we'll say version matched here. So 7.1 is matched with whatever the version that we are using here. Okay, so that's the operator here, equal to operator, to check whether the values are equal or not. Okay, so let's move on to the next example. So I just created a new file and I copied the code. Let's try to write the sample too. Here we will use data type. So sample 2, we are using the equal to operator, but it's called as identical operator, which means the data type has to match and the value has to match. Here both the values match and even the data type match, means it is integer and integer. If you're comparing integer with a string, that's basically this will be pass but this will be fail. Okay, so let's try to see that example. So name 1 is equal to 10, name 2 is equal to 10. So I'm using a string and an integer, and let's do PHP UL. Then I'll compare both $name1 with $name2, and I'm say name matched, name does not matched. So I'm using the identical operator, which compares not only the value but also the data type. So because the data types are different, it's a string, it's an integer. So let's look into this example. Okay, the name does not match but the values are same. Let's try to use an equal to operator. Okay, and it says name matched. That's basically coming up from the next one. I'm gonna put a new line here. Right, so name matched. Right, that's basically the difference between the identical operator and the equal to operator. And if you want to make it match, let's say we will define one more variable 3 as 10, and let's use the equal to operator and name 1 with name 3. Let's do a comparison here. Okay, and it says name matched. So now we are comparing string to a string, not an integer to integer but a string to a string. The data type will match and also the values are matched, so that's why it's saying name is matched. Okay, so let's move on and do the next exercise. I'll copy this code. Let's do a sample 3. Sample 3, we will find oranges using this operator, not equal to, and then not equal to. We're going to find all these differences. So we'll say a special fruit, which is oranges. Then we'll say you have two fruit 1 is apple, fruit 2 is oranges. Okay, so you have to find the special fruit. using these operators. You can find via equal to operator, but I wanted to show you how to use these operators. Okay, so we'll use ternary operator. So we'll say special fruit not equal to fruit 1. Then we'll say it is not oranges. It is oranges. Okay, so if this condition is true, means we are using not operator, right? Then this will be executed, and if this condition is false, then this will be executed. Okay, so let's look into this. So let's put a new line here. Well, it is not an orange because the condition is true. That's why it's going to the true value, right? The special fruit is not really equal to apple. That's a true condition, right? That's why it's going to this condition. Okay, so let's look at another example of fruit 2. Okay, then it says, okay, it's an oranges. Well, this condition is basically a false because special fruit is equal to fruit 2. That's why the false condition has been executed. And this time, instead of not equal to, I'll use not equal to, right? The results are same. Then we'll do one more operator, that's basically not, and double equal to. This is basically identical, which will not identical, right? Which will say the data type plus the value, right? It's still able to get it, right? So these are the 3 not equal to conditions that you can use. Highly preferred one is this one and this one, so you can go ahead and use for your conditions. Okay, so let's go and look into the next example. I'll copy the code. The sample 4, we will find the so we have defined 3 variables, citizen 1, citizen 2 and citizen 3, and we will put an age limit of 60. Then we'll check what is the age of these 3 people. Then we'll define the age of the citizen. We have defined the citizen names. We have decided what is the age limit of the senior citizen. Then we have defined the age of each of the citizens. Okay, so let's find out who is the senior citizen. So for that we will echo out. And we'll use an operator called greater than. So we'll use the greater than symbol to check whether this value is greater than the right hand side value. So age 1 is basically the age of the citizen, which is 40, and we'll check whether it is greater than the age limit. So let's execute this. So you say John is not senior because John age is just 40. So we'll put an end of line here, end of line here, right? Let's do for the rest of these citizens as well. Okay, so let's execute this. So you can find John is not senior, Walter is senior, and Ajit is also a senior citizen. This is basically coming up because the age is greater than 60. Okay, so let's quickly do the other operators. So we'll call it sample 5. We can even use equal to operators here just to say greater than and equal to, right? And then let's say if any of the age is 60, right, then it says Walter is still citizen because we are saying greater than. But here if you make another citizen as 60, then it's, so we can use the equal to operator, that's greater than and equal to, and then we can change the citizen from 64 to 60, and then we'll try to print this. So I'm going to use the 5th one, and you can see the citizen 2, which is Walter, and Walter is a senior citizen. Here the Walter is not a senior citizen, because if you change from 64 to 60 here, you are only saying greater than, means 61 onwards, but not 60. But you say age limit is 60, so you have to change it to greater than and is equal to, which means it will check greater than and also equal to symbol, then the result will be correct. Okay, so that's basically the greater than and equal to. You can convert this into less than and equal to. Let's look into that sample. So I'll call it sample 4 only because it's part of sample 4. And let's do sample 5. Let's use the same example, and let's see who can eat pizza, right? So this is what we want to say. Find the kids who want to eat pizza for free. So the age limit is 10, so if you're less than 10 you get a pizza for free. So let's define the age. Let's say he's 64 and then he's 8. Okay, so let's define one of the example. So now you say not a senior citizen, so we'll change it to name 1, name 2, name 3, so we say name 1 should be less than or equal to the age limit, right? Then you get to eat the pizza for free. So we say name 1 can eat pizza for free. Then we say sorry, name 1 cannot eat pizza. I will do for this rest of the other 2 ages as well. Okay, so let's execute this. There's a 5th example, and you can see John can eat pizza for free because John's age is 4. Walter cannot eat pizza because his age is 64, and Ajit can eat pizza because his age is 8. Okay, so the operator we have used is less than and equal to. You can even use less than symbol, and you can also use less than and equal to. So we have seen less than and equal to, greater than and equal to, we have seen greater than as well. Then we have used not equal to operators. Then we have seen identical equal operator, and then we have seen the equal operator. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on logical operators. So let's look at logical operator. You go to material folder, example for logical operators. Open up these 2 files. So there are the examples that we'll see to understand logical operators. First we will greet hello and the name of that user if the user is logged in and has permission. So we'll define some variables and we will check that whether they have both the conditions are valid or not. Check if student is passed any of one exam, so we'll use OR condition here. Then we'll find the difference with another operator called and then this is another operator for OR. We're going to look into all these things and check if student is not passed and print the results. So we'll use a not operator here. So we'll look into all these operators. So let's go ahead and create the file. So I'll be doing it in the operators folder and I'll be using the console. Control N, Control S, and I'll save in the operators folder, which is under www. So let me copy all the operators here. Okay. So these are the operators. You have an AND operator, means both condition should be true. OR operator, any one of the condition can be true. And then AND also can be represented with double ampersands. An OR condition can also be represented with this symbol. And then you can use OR as a word or even this symbol. Okay. And then you also have if not, which is basically a not condition. Okay. So let's look into all these examples. So first example was to greet hello. So I'll copy this out. So we'll say whether that person has permission. So I'll use some Boolean variables here and it'll say logged in. Okay, so the dollar permission is true and logged in is true. And then we'll say user is equal to John Smith. Then we'll say echo then we'll say hello user, or we'll say hello guest. Okay, so this is basically a simple check and we're using the AND operator to check whether both the conditions are true. If both the conditions are true, then the true is executed, and if any of the condition is false, then the false is executed. Okay, so let's run this. So it's saying John, hello Smith, and we will print and if you make any of this is false, right, it will say hello guest. Okay, because the two of the condition has to be true in order to be true. If any of it the conditions is false, then it will be false. So I'll change back this to true and it's hello Smith. Okay, so let's look into the next example. OR condition, Control N, Control S, saving the file. So the next example is check if student pass any one exam. So we'll define a student, that is John, and we will check his maths passed, true, science passed is true. Then we'll check whether any of the exams is being passed by the student or not. So we say either true, either this or that is true. Okay, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to check any one of it is true, and we are checking with the student marks. We say so maths passed or science passed. Then we'll say $student has passed so we are saying any one of the exam is passed and the student is passed. And let's see what happens. So we see John is passed because any of this is true and both are true. So if this is false and this is false, then the John is not passed, right? Let's say if any of this is true, then John will be passed, and also the other way around, right? So any of the conditions are true, it will be true. Any of the conditions are false, even though it's any of one of is true, then it becomes true. If both are false, then it is false. If both are true, then it is true. Okay, so if you make this false, this is the last condition I want to show you, then that will be John not passed because both are false. Okay, that's the OR condition. Let's continue and do the next example. Copy the code. You do sample 3. Find the difference between and or. That will be interesting because you can replace and with ampersand and it still works, but you need to know when to use those operators. So we're going to find that difference. So this will be interesting to know when to use and operator and the ampersand operator. So we'll use two results. Result 1 is equal to true and true, true and false. Okay, then result 2 is also true and false. Okay, then we'll say let's print this out. So we'll compare the results. $result 1, and then we will say true or false. Then $result 2 will also true and false, and then we will print the new lines. Okay, can you guess the output? If true and false, what do you think it is? Obviously false. True and false, obviously false. So both should be false, right? Let's look at the operators now. But the result says it is false and true. It's true, even though it is true and false. It's true. Why it is happening like this? Okay, that's interesting to know. Why the result 2 is basically resulting into true. Why not false? Because and isn't false operator, right? And should say both should be true. And that's basically come up from an operator precedence. We will be covering this lecture in the last section, and we will look into this example again. But remember, there is something called as precedence. Means is equal to and are basically two operators happening on the statement. So which one has more precedence over the other? In the first statement, the is equal to and ampersand, the ampersand has more precedence than equal to. So this will be executed first. In the second line, the equal to has more precedence than and. That's why the equal to is assigned first, which is true. And even though its operator has been executed, it doesn't assign value to the result 2. So that's why the result 2 basically showing you the true value. That's basically the first values assigned to result 2. Okay, so remember this. We will cover operator precedence in the last, and we will play around with this. Okay, then next let's look at operator 4. We'll do a similar exercise with OR operator, and we'll see what is the difference there. So this is sample 4, and we'll say OR and pipe symbol. Okay, I will execute this. This time it is true and true. Obviously, true or false is true, true or false is true. Even then the precedence is equal to, it takes a true. Okay, So let's look into one more example of this one, wherein we'll say true or false. I will put this condition here, true or false. Okay, it still works. If you say false, false and true, let's look into this. So it will have false because the equal to has more precedence than this. But if you put the same statement in the condition, there is no equal to sign, then it will execute properly. It will check true or false and it will be true, and then true will be assigned. That's basically the next condition. But wherein the true and the false, because the first value will be assigned first, then or execute, which doesn't assign to the result value. So the first value is false, that has been assigned to result 2. So the result 2 is always false and the false is printed. And this equal to sign is not available here. That's why the operator precedence is first is to execute this condition in the condition in the ternary operator, and then whatever is the value, that value will be printed. So true or false is true, so true is printed. This true is printed. This is false because the operator precedence for assignment is higher than the OR operator. Okay, so let's look at the next and final example. So I created a new file and I copied the same code and we'll do the sample file. So the last one is to check if the student is not passed and print the results. So we'll say total marks, passing marks is 34 and passing marks is 35. So this total is basically the total marks that student achieved. The passing marks is 35. Then we will check whether the student is passed. Right, you can use the condition here. You can say $total greater than equal to passing marks. Then you can say, you can just say true or false. Right, then you can say echo if the student is not passed. So I'm using a symbol called not, and this not is will check the reverse. If it is true, it will check for false. If it is false, it will check for true. So we are saying whether he has not passed, right? Then we'll say if it's true, say not passed. Okay, if it is false, he say passed. Okay, this is an operator. It will check reverse of the condition. If it is true, it will check for false, and false will be true for this condition, and this will be executed. Okay, so I'm checking whether the student is passed or not. So let's execute this. So we are saying total is greater than passing marks, then it's true or false. Obviously it is false because total is not greater than passing marks. And then we have saying is passed, then it is passed and not passed. Okay, obviously it's not passed because the total marks is less than the passing marks. And if you have to reverse this condition, then you say, okay, I want to check whether he's not passed. Then you have to reverse this condition as well, right? Because you're checking a false condition, right? So that's how you use the not condition. Well, the not operator will reverse the Boolean variable. So if it is false and you say not, it becomes true. When it becomes true, this will be executed, right? And if this value is true and you put a not here, it becomes a false, then this value will be executed. Means if you say 36, let's say 36, then the student is passed, right? If you say 34, the student will not be passed. Well, that's how to use the not operator. So we have seen not operator, we have seen or, and then we have seen and operator. Okay, and these are the operators called as logical operator. So that's all for this lecture on logical operators. Then I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on assignment operators. So if you go to the material folder, assignment operators, Let's open up the deliverables and the logical flow for this section. So part of this, we will understand how to use assignment operators. So we'll be developing 3 examples. First, we'll assign a value 10 to a variable which is called as marks as a variable. Then we'll use the operator. The second example, we will learn how to use subtraction and also multiplication. Then finally, we'll learn about divide and modulus. Okay, part of this will create 3 files. So let's go ahead and look into this. So first file is assignment operators1.php. So I'm going to create this file, save the file, and I'll use ww operators. Okay, so let's first define what are the operators that we will use here. To save time, I'll try to copy the assignments here. I've just copied over the operators that we'll be looking in this lecture. Okay. So part of this, we will use assignment operator, that is equal to. Then we have plus is equal to, which is an add assignment operator. We'll also use dot is equal to. Then we'll use subtraction, multiplication, divide and modulus. Okay, let's quickly do some examples on this. So first we will assign a value 10 to the variable which is called as marks, right? So we'll say marks equal to, so equal to is basically an assignment operator, and then we'll assign a value to it. Then we'll define another variable, name variable, which will say string variable to variable $name. And we'll give some name to it. Okay, then we'll create the operator, start using the operators now. So first we will use the plus is equal to, which is an add operation, right? So we'll define a counter is equal to 1, and we'll say counter plus 1. Okay, there's one way to increment a counter by adding plus 1, and there's another way to increment the counter using that operator. So you can say plus is equal to $counter. Okay, so you can use this way or you can use this way. It actually means counter is equal to counter plus 1. There's a short notation for using this kind of syntax. And you can also say marks plus is equal to 10. So whatever the marks value, it's increment by 10. Okay, so let's print this values. So we'll say counter So let's quickly run this. So counter is basically increment by 1. Okay, and then marks is basically increment by 10. Okay, so here the counter value is 2, right? Counter is counter plus 1, so 1 becomes 2. So 2 is added back to the counter. So let's verify this. So that's 4 because it's 1 when you assigned it. Then you increment it by 1, that becomes 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, and then 10, the initial value of marks is 10, then 10 plus 10 is 20. Okay, that's what the 20 coming up here. Let's do the assignment operator for string variable. So instead of printing this, okay, I'm going to print this first, echo. Imagine you have first name and last name, right? Let's say you have John, and you want to add the comma to it. You want to have the same notation like John comma Smith. So you can say comma here, space, but you can use the dot operator here. Means to the same variable after John you are assigning this string. Okay, you can keep on adding this, right? So this means you're trying to attach some strings to this variable using the dot is equal to operator. It's like the same plus is equal to which you increment. This is the same string notation which is used to combine the strings to the actual existing string. So it's basically whatever value is in the name, to that variable these strings are attached in the last. Okay, so let's print this. Well, the output looks exactly the same. That's because we are attaching the strings to the variable. So that's how you basically attach string to a variable, and you use plus is equal to increment the counter. Okay, so let's move on. Let's look at the second sample. We'll use subtraction and multiplication. So I'm going to call this sample 1. I'm going to copy this to our code, and let's start doing sample 2. So we'll use the same counter just to save time. I'm going to copy paste this code, and we're going to use subtraction here. It works exactly the same. It's just the operator will do the subtraction here. Okay, then we'll use multiplication. So for multiplication, so we'll define a variable called square, and then we're going to say square multiply equal to square. So this is basically multiplying the same value. This means the square variable is multiplied by the square variable itself. Okay, then we're going to echo this out. Okay, let's quickly look into this. So we have 0 and 100. 0 is because 1 minus 1 is 0. Then 10 multiplied by 10 is 100. Okay, let's look at the third example. I'm going to copy over this, and we'll do the sample 3. Sample 3, we're going to use two operators here, divide and modulus. Modulus is remainders. So let's look into that first. So we'll use a variable called, so let's define some comments here. Say use this operator divide by 2. So if you want to divide 50 by 2, this is just a variable name, right? You can say this variable divide by 2. So this is almost equal to, so instead of saying divide by 2, you can use the shorthand notation of divide equal to. Then we can print this out. Then we'll use the remainder, the modulus. And we'll say remainder modulus is equal to 2. So we have two cases. One is the divide and one is the modulus. So modulus basically 50 divided by 2. What is the remainder? That remainder will be in this variable. Okay, so let's run this. So let's save this first. So 25 is basically 50 divided by 2. That's 25, and 0 is the remainder for when you divide 50 by 2. Okay, so we have used the operators here. We have used modulus, divide, multiplication, subtraction, then we have used the plus and the dot operator. Okay, so these are basically called as assignment operators. Okay, so that's all for this lecture. I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture. In this lecture we're going to see increment and decrement operators. So you have post increment and pre-increment, and then you have post decrement and pre-decrement. So we're going to look into those operators now. So if you go to this folder example 6, open the deliverable. So we'll use this operator which is denoted by plus plus, that is increment, minus minus is decrement. Okay, so let's use this operator now. So I'm going to save the file. I'm copy over what are the operators here. So I copied over two operators here. The first is plus plus, that is an incremental operator by 1. Okay, so whenever you say plus plus, by default it includes that it is equal to plus 1. When you say minus minus, it is decremental by 1. Okay, remember the value 1 is not seen, but it's implicated that when you use plus plus or minus minus, the actual value will be decremented by 1 and incremented by 1. Okay, so let's look at these examples. So we'll use the same counter variable. So we'll say use plus plus increment operator. For this we will define a counter of 10. Previously we saw the assignment operator, right, which we say plus 1, that becomes the 11. Then we echo it out. Then we were able to see 11. So let's quickly do this. Okay, the same thing can be achieved with post increment operator. We can simply say like this. So if you notice, the operators I have assigned after the variable, that's why it's called as post. Well, can you guess what is the output here and what is the output here? And remember, it is post. Okay, make a guess, then I'll run this. Then I'll try to explain you why it happened like that. So if you see here, 11 is coming up from here. Again, when even after you increment, it is 11. But after the increment has been done, the next time the value becomes 12. Okay, the post increment will not increment and display in the same statement. The post increment will happen after the statement has been finished. So once statement has been finished, this operator will execute and the variable of counter will be 12. But when echo tries to print this variable, it doesn't take post increment into the consideration. Well, that's because the post increment increments after the statement execution has been finished. That's why once after it's finished, the counter variable value is 12, and that's why we are able to print it. Well, what if you want to increment first and then print it? Okay, so let's look at the pre-increment operator. So instead of using the plus plus after the variable, you use the same operator before the variable. Okay, let's look at the output now. So this time you can see 13 and 13. So pre-increment basically is before any operation happens, the pre-increment will execute. That's basically the operator precedence, right? The first operator execute is this one. The value of counter will be 13, and after that the echo will be executed. Where in the post, first the echo is executed, and after the statement is finishing, it executes this post. So post doesn't take into consideration when the statement is executing. You just execute, and then the value is assigned after the statement has been finished. Wherein the pre, before anything happens, it makes sure the pre is executed first. It has the highest precedence. Then once the value of counter is 13, then it's taken into consideration the statement to execute the rest of the equation. Okay, and then you can see even though before and after the value is same. Okay, let's use the same notation for minus minus, that's a decrement operator. I'm copy pasting just to save time. You can use the same operator minus, and you can verify this. That's basically 9, because 10 minus 1 is 9. And you can have the post and pre for counters as well. Okay, so let's view this. If you look at 9 and 8, that's basically the post. 7 and 7 is basically coming up from the decrement. So this basically, this operator will execute first, then the actual statement will execute. Okay, so that's all about incremental and decremental operators. It's very handy. It's automatically incremented by 1 and decremented by 1. You have post and pre. Okay, so that's all about this lecture on incremental and decremental operator. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on bitwise operators. Let's look at the deliverables that we'll be creating part of this. We'll learn to use the bitwise operator and then we'll create this file. So before that, we'll discuss something about bitwise operators, then we'll jump into it because it requires some knowledge on bitwise operators works and what is the processing that is happening in the background. So I'm going to copy paste some of the operators and also how this bit works. Okay, let's understand this slowly and then we're going to jump into doing some exercises on this. So there are many bitwise operators. For this example, we'll use AND, OR, XOR and NOT. Okay, the NOT basically works on one operator like plus plus and minus minus, which is a unary operator. So let's look at how bits work. So bits basically are nothing but zeros and 1. Okay, and everything that we have on our ASCII characters, or the characters that you type, is converted into a bits because computer only understands zeros and 1. So everything, instructions that you're giving to computer are basically converted into zeros and 1s. So everything can be represented with something called as bits, which is a notation of zeros and 1s, right? So when you want to operate on that level, at zeros and 1s level, you use something called as bitwise operator. So let's look at integers. Okay, left hand side I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are integer numbers, like the numbers that you see on the keyboard. The bitwise notation of this numerical numbers are, if it's 0, then it's 4 zeros. If it's 1, then it's 0, 0, 0, 1. If it's 2, it's 0, 0, 1, 0. If it's 3, and then so forth, right? So if you want to play around with bits, you basically play around with zeros and 1s. Okay, so remember, as of now, for every integer or character or anything that instruction you pass it to computer is first converted into bits, and then you want to operate on the bits, you basically use these operators. And this operator works not on the value, but they work on the bits. And each numerical value, as we have taken an example of 0 to 5, we have listed out the bits value for it. Okay, then we'll do some operation on these variables and see how the bitwise operator will work. Okay, so let's look at the operation here. If it is 1 and 1, okay, 1 and 1 is 1, true and true is true, 0 and 0, false and false is 0, 0 and 1, false and true is false, true and false is false. Okay, so only the 1 and 1 basically are equal to 1. Let's say you want to apply a bitwise operator on 1 and 0. Basically you are comparing the first bits of this, okay, 0 and 1. So 0 and 1 is 0, 0, 0 is 0, 0, 0 is 0, and 0, 0 is 0. So that's how the bitwise operator will work. So let's take a look at an example here. So I'm going to say first is 0, and 0's bitwise operator is 0, 0, 0, 0. And second, let's say I will assign a value of 1. The bits notation of 1 is 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, now let's apply the bitwise operator on these variables and we'll see what will happen. Okay, so let's assign a bitwise operator. We'll say echo first, second, okay. Let's execute this, then I'll explain you how it actually works. Okay, the value is 0, and now you have no idea why it's 0, right? So let's look into that. So the first variable is 0, right? So we say 0 0 0 0 and 0 0 0 1. That's basically the bitwise notation, and this is a bitwise operator. Okay, now the first operator will work on bits, right? So 0 and 0, then it's again say and 0 and 0, then we'll say 0 and 0, and we'll say 0 and 1. Okay, and if you look at all the zeros and 1, that's an AND operator, right? Here we say AND operator, right? So AND basically will say first one is 0, second one is 0, third one is 0, fourth one is 0, because false and true is again false, right? False or is true, but false and true is basically false, because both has to be true. So it's all zeros, and because it's 0, the numerical value of all zeros are 0. Okay, let's take another example. Let's put 2 and 3. Okay, just to see some variation. And bitwise for 2 is basically 0 1 0, that's from here, and 3 is 0 0 1 1. Okay, let's do the same operation and let's compare the output, then we'll talk about it. So this time it's 2, right? So let's look at why is this 2. So first the 0 0 1 0 and 0 0 1 1. Okay, now let's do each of the bits, 0 and 0. So I'm taking the first bit here, the first bit here, and the first bit here. Then you say 1, then there'll be a 1 here. Okay, then and again 0 of 0. Next is 1 of 0, 1 of 1, then you have 0 of 1. Okay, that will result us into 0 0 1 0, right? And 0 0 1 0 from our table is basically 2. That's why the value 2 has been printed. Okay, so it's operating on the bits. And let's say you want to do some other transactions. Let's say we want to do OR operations, right? We want to do OR on the bits. You have the operators here. Let's do a quick review: OR, XOR, and NOT. So we want to do an XOR here. So this character can be found on keyboard 6. Then you have the NOT character. Then you have NOT operator, which works like your plus plus and minus minus, like a unary operator. So it doesn't operate on 2 variables, it operates on 1 operand, which basically like this. Like this. So the first one, let's do a quick review. So you have 0 0 1 0, so it's basically 0 and 1, right? 0 and 1 this time will be 1, right? And here the 0 and 1 will result into 1, and 1 and 1 will result into 0. It's basically a NOT, so it's a reverse one. If it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. Okay, this is inverting the bit. If 0, then it will be 1, or if it's 1, then it's 0. Okay, it's actually reversing the bits. Okay, the inverse, the NOT operator will reverse the bits. So if you have 0 0 1, it becomes 1 1 1 0. Okay, it just reverse the bits. The OR, the NOT operator, if it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. The OR operator, if 0 is 1, then any 1 is true, it becomes true. Okay, so let's execute this. That's the value when you have OR operator, XOR operator, and the NOT operator. Well, to work around with bits, you have to remember how the bits notation of that value and what operator you want to apply on that bits. Okay, this is a very helpful topic when you understand how bitwise works. So I'll highly recommend you do some exercises here and play around and understand how bits work here. Okay, so that's all this lecture on bitwise operator, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the lecture on execution operators. So let's go ahead and look at how execution operator works. So if you go to execution operator folder, you have deliverables and logical flow. So execution operator use a symbol called as backtick. Don't confuse backtick with single quotes. Backtick is a symbol that you can find beside the number 1 on your keyboard. Okay, you have a tilde symbol there, then you have a backtick, so you have to press shift to get to the backtick. Okay, so we'll use this backtick symbol. Remember, it's not a single quote, it's a backtick, which is a symbol you can find on your keyboard beside the number 1. Okay, this is used to execute the DOS command. So if you have like dir, which is to list the files, you want to execute the same command and get the output in the PHP program, you use backtick symbol. Okay, so let's quickly look into that. Very simple to understand, so I'm going to create this file very quick. Save this file. So let's use this backtick symbol. So let me show you what is that symbol. It's like this. You don't have to press the shift, just hit the button that is beside 1 and you can get the backtick. This is left side to number 1 on keyboard. Okay, for Windows you can say echo dir *.php. So I use single quotes there. I'll use backtick. Okay, you can see the difference, right? Single quote will print the text, right? And now I'm replacing single quote with backtick, so you can see the difference. Okay, that's called as backtick, and this is called as execution operator. It will execute this code on the command line, and then whatever is output, it will be printed on your page. For Mac, you can say ls. Okay, so let's quickly run this, and you will see dir *.php. Okay, and ls is not a command because ls is for Mac. If you're writing a program that you want to execute some Windows commands on the command prompt, or you want to execute on the terminal using then ls and Unix commands, you can use this backtick symbol. Okay, well, you use the backtick symbol to execute the commands on the command line, and you can execute it from the PHP program as well. Okay, so play around with it, remove this command and use some other commands that you want to do on the command line and try to play around with it. So that's all on this lecture on execution operator, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on error control operators. So let's quickly look at what we're going to learn in this section. So error control operators are used to suppress the error. So whenever there is an error, right, we will raise an error, right? The operator that we use called as error control operator are used to suppress the error. Okay, so remember that it is not to raise an error, but it's basically to suppress it. So we'll try to raise an error manually, and then we'll try to suppress it. Okay, so let's look into that. So I'm creating that file. So how to raise an error? You can always raise error by dividing by 0, and this line is an error and will not proceed further. Okay, so let's look into this. If I say echo hello, so that's basically an error here, and you want to control this error. It means you don't want to show this error to the user, right? But you want to skip this error. For that, you have something called as error control operators. So if you want to skip this error and you don't want to raise an exception and show it to the user on the web page, you just want to control. Maybe you're not sure whether it will raise an exception or not, but if it raises an exception, you want to skip this error. You don't want to show this on the web page. So for this, we will use something called as error control operator, which is denoted by @ symbol. So if you put the @ symbol and you print it, it's basically skipping that error. And if you remove that error control operator, it's basically show you that error. Okay, very handy and very useful when you want to suppress the error on the web page and you want to know whether an error has been raised, right? What you can do is you can check whether an error has been raised previously or not using something called as PHP error message. Okay, let's execute this. Then you can see the division by 0 error has been raised. So if you suppress it and you execute, you know there is an error has been raised, and this variable will actually holds an error if somewhere in the operations the error has been raised and you have suppressed it. By checking at this variable, you know any errors has been raised previously or not. Okay, so what I've done, I've printed this before and after. So let's call it before. So what I've done, I've called it before and after this variable, right? To see whether before, whether does it have any value, and after does it have any value. Okay, before have nothing, after it has division by 0. So even you suppress something, you want to know whether error has been raised, this variable can actually help you do that. Okay, so remember the error control operator, which is denoted by @ symbol, which is used to control the errors to be displayed on the web page. Okay, so that's all on this lecture on error control operators, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on operator precedence. So operator precedence is basically a sequence in which the operators basically execute. We have seen this previously, but we're going to look into all the precedents that we have for operators. So if you go to example 10, let's open these files. So we'll understand how the operator precedence works and we'll create this file part of it. So let's copy this file, create this file. So I'm going to copy paste the operators here. So they are basically operator precedence. First you have unary operator, the minus, exclamatory, plus plus and minus minus. Then you have multiplication, abstract and subtract, relational, equality, logical, and that's basically the ampersand and basically the OR operator. Then you have conditional operator, that's the conditional operator, and you have assignment operator. So that's basically the precedence in how the operators get executed. So let's look at some examples on this just to understand how the precedence will work. You have to remember this because this is how the precedence actually happens over the each and every operator. So if you look at conditional over the plus plus, the plus plus execute first depending on pre or post. You have seen that if it's post, then basically it's go down, right? Pre means come up. Then you have multiplication. If you have multiplication in the conditional, the multiplication will execute first, then the conditional will be applied later. But if you have assignment operators, then the assignment operators, you know, the conditional has more preference than assignment operators. So we have seen that as well. So let's look at some examples. So if you say we have a value, let's define a variable and let's echo this out. And we'll assign a counter and guess the output of the counter. I want you to think through with all these examples that we have seen, assignment and increment and unary operator, right? So guess what is the output of counter? Okay, the value is 11. That's not 12, but it's 11. And if you print the value of value, it's actually 12. The value is 12, but the assignment basically happens first and then the unary operator. Even the unary operator execute first and assignment the last. But if it is the post operator, then basically the assignment gets the first precedence, then the post. So post, basically everything after your statement is finished, then the operator get execute. If it changes to pre, then the value of counter will be 12 first, then the actual operation happens. Okay, guess another output. Okay, I'll give you one more example. So let's say value is equal to 5 into 2 plus 5. I'll say echo $value. Okay, so guess the output. What is the value here? 5 into 2 plus 5, 2 plus 5 multiplied by 5, or 5 multiplied by 2 then plus 5. How this actually works? Okay, this is a very good example to see how the operator precedence will work. So why it is 15? It is because the operator precedence, the multiplication has the highest precedence over the add operator. So add will get the last precedence. The first precedence go to this operation. 5 2s 10 and 10 plus 5 is 15. Well, that's how the operator precedence work. The multiplication has the higher precedence than plus, and that's why the multiplication execute first and then the addition operation. And then we saw a classical example, right? If you remember, the assignment operator has higher precedence over AND operator. We saw this result 1 is equal to true and false, and result 2 we have seen this example previously. Just to donate the is equal to and the AND operator, which one execute first? For both the operation you should say AND, right? So AND of true and false should be false, but sometimes it is true. We have seen this previously, right? False and true. So second case is actually true because the assignment operator has higher precedence over AND. That's why it just assign the value true and it ignores the AND operator. Okay, so that's a classic example of understanding how the operator precedence work. This will help you understand how two operators works, and this will help you understand when you do a mathematical formula, you need to know which operation comes first. Okay, and then you have post and pre increments and decrements that you have to understand how the operation will execute before and after assigning the value in the statement. Okay, so that's all about the operator precedence. This is the precedence in which the operator gets executed in the statement. So do some exercises on it and understand how the operator precedence works. Okay, so that's all on this lecture on operator precedence, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the exercise section, and we'll do exercises on expression and operation. So if you go to the materials folder, exercise 1, you should able to find two folders after and before. Okay, so before that we'll see what exercises we have. So part of this will create one file, and here is the exercise that you're going to do. First we will add two numbers using arithmetical operators. That is the first exercise. Second, we will find students passed or failed using conditional operator. Then third, we will show a number is even or odd using a comparison operator. Then we'll check if user has access or login rights using logical operator. Then fifth one, we will assign an integer value and increment by 10 using the assignment operator. So you see there are two exercises, exercise 1 and exercise 2. So we are doing exercise 1 and we'll cover some of the operators here. Okay, so before you start, you don't have to create from scratch. There's a before file, so you should start from here. So let's go ahead and put this file in our exercise folder. So if you go to the amps ww folder exercise, so we dump the file here. Then we'll rename and remove that word called before. Okay, and this exercise we are not doing from console, we are doing from a browser. Okay, so let's run this file and see what's the exercise all about. Okay, so here are the exercises. So we'll start doing the exercise and then we'll print all the details here. Okay, so let's open this file. So if you go to www exercise folder, I'm going to open this file and it have some HTML content in it. Okay, so the first exercise is add two numbers using arithmetical operators. So let's do this. So let's define two variables. First name, not first name, first number and second number. You can call it anything you want. Then we'll say add. Then we'll use the add operator. Okay, and then we'll add break. We don't need to add break because there's an heading tag, so it will automatically add the breaks. Okay, so let's verify this. So that's 20. That's basically using the arithmetical operator add. Next we will find a student pass or fail using conditional operator. So we'll have a result variable and we'll assign passed. Then we'll echo out whether the result is passed or failed. Okay, so we'll say result equal to passed. Then student is failed. Okay, so they should print pass or fail based on the conditional operator. Okay, the student is passed because the result is passed. Then we'll show an even number and odd number using the comparison operator. So we'll say number is equal to 10. Then we'll use modulus to determine the remainder, and then based on the remainder we'll know whether it is odd or even number. Then we'll check whether result is equal to 0. If it is, then it is even number or it is odd number. So let's run this. Okay, it's an even number because 10 is an even number. Okay, check if a user has access to login rights using logical operator. So we'll say has login, true, has access, true. Then we'll compare this out. So we define two variables and we are using a logical operator to check whether user has access or user does not have access. Okay, the user have access because true and true is true. The next is we'll assign integer value and increment by 10 using the assignment operator. So we'll increment by 10 and then we'll echo the number. Right, so that's 20. Okay, so we are able to use assignment operator, we have used logical operators, we have used comparison operator, and then we have used the conditional operator, then we have used arithmetical operator. Okay, so that's all for this exercise and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on exercise 2. Okay, so let's do the remaining operators. So if you go to exercise 2 folder, you can find after and before. So let's open up the logical flow of examples and also deliverables. So here is the logical flow of examples. The first example, we will use decrement operator, using which we'll decrement a number. Then we'll use a bitwise operator to show the negative of 5. Then we'll use execution operator, using which we'll execute DOS or Linux commands. Then we'll use error control operator to raise and control the error. Then we'll see one of the example of operator precedence operator. So do this exercise and use the file that is in before. Then if you have challenges, then you can watch this video, or else you should be doing this exercise by your own. Pause this video here and you can continue doing the exercise. So let's doing the exercise now. So first we'll copy the folder that is from before. We'll put it in exercise folder and I'll remove the world called before. Okay, we'll use this file. This is a starting point. So we'll see. So these are the exercise we'll do part of this lecture. Okay, the first one is we'll use a decrement number using decrement operator. We'll use minus minus number and we'll echo this out. So this will be 9. Then we'll show negative of 5. So we'll say number is equal to 5. And then we'll use tilde dollar number, which is negative of 5. That's basically minus 6. Then we'll execute a DOS command. That's a backtick, not a single quote. So these are all the files. Then we'll raise an exception. And we'll put @ symbol. Say nothing happened, right? But there's an exception right there. Right, it doesn't raise an exception, but if you remove this, then you'll see the exception. Okay, that's basically controlling the exception. Then you show an example for operator precedence. Then we have our classic example. We're going to do that. So I'll say 10 divided by 2 plus some calculation. Okay, so you need to know whether plus execute first or the divide execute first. Okay, that's basically 10, because 10 by 2 is 5, 5 plus 5 is 10. Okay, so that's all for this lecture. So we have seen operator precedence, we have seen how to raise and control the error, we have used the execution operator, we have used bitwise operator, also we have used decrement operator. Okay, so these are the operators that we have learned in this section. So I hope you were able to do this exercise, and you can do some variations as well. You don't have to follow exactly like same. Well, you can try out your own examples with the operators and then have fun with these operators. Okay, so that's all for this lecture, and then I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on assignments on expression and operators. So if you go to practical test folder, you should find the logical flow of example. So I want you to do this exercise. Okay, so we have seen all the operators here. I want you to try at least one example using arithmetical operator, and make sure you don't refer back to anything. Okay, you can try with your normal flow so that you can get used to these operators. And these operators are very important, because if you don't know what operator to use, then writing complex code become really complex, because you cannot get that flow of writing PHP. So this is a good exercise. Don't skip it. That's my advice. And try to at least find some example. Not really need to have a very good example, but try to use these operators and see whether you understand when and how to use these operators. Okay, so do this assignment and post your results, and I'll be there to verify it. All the best for your assignment, and I'll see you in the next one. Well, that's the end of the section on expression and operators, and let's do a quick summary on what you should be able to do now. You should be able to explain expression and operators. You should be able to do all sorts of examples with the operators like conditional, arithmetical, and all those things. Well, you should now be able to understand the operator precedence and use them wisely by understanding what is the sequence of the operator that they execute. And also, I believe you have worked through exercises, interview question, resources, and all the practical tests. Well, that's the end of this section, and I'll see you in the next one.